Hey, you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, hold on. Got it. Okay, I'm getting it.
Oh,
Turn
now
the
you can
volume
hear me
down.
again.
Oh, lucky me. Yeah.
Hey, you there?
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. Oh, hold on. Got it. Okay, I'm getting it.
Oh, now
What are
you
you
can hear
doing?
me again.
Oh, lucky me. Yeah.
I had to mute it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was hearing myself in my ear, and I don't need to hear my stupid voice.
It was weird. I had something screwed up on the thing.
No. Can't believe you screw anything up. You of all people. Nope. Nope.
But live chat, all messages are visible. Okay, good evening, everyone. Monday evening edition, holiday Monday evening.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a holiday weekend. It's been a good weekend. Get back to the swing of things tomorrow again, though.
Yep.
Back to work. Back to the swing of things.
Back to work, back to school.
I know. No, sucks to be you, but that's the way it is. That's life. It's life in the big city. You chose to be a big student, so
Mm.
I don't want to hear about your crap going back to school.
Good evening, Barbara. Good evening, Ben. Good evening, Frank.
Oh, hey, what's wrong with this thing?
Frank says, "Happy 30th anniversary of the Gettysburg movie."
Yeah. That's I've been seeing a lot of that in social media. Yeah, that's I know Gettysburg is doing a big deal about that. That's cool, good for them. So I think a lot of people we know are actually heading down for the big shindig there, where the great Arthur Fremantle will be, James Lancaster will be signing autographs, and James Mallon, and all kinds of cool people. So if you're going, drive safe, get down there, enjoy it. I think I would have liked to have gone to that, admittedly, because I wanted to meet James Lancaster, the guy who played Fremantle. I think he's one of my heroes, and so I wanted to see that. But alas, it's not in the cards. Or other aspects of our lives are taking precedence that weekend.
It's been very, very busy. We're looking forward to not traveling on weekends and stuff. I wish I could go to the talk that Jeff Shara is giving about the Killer Angels, because I think he's going to talk a lot about like the publishing of it and all that, because apparently it got like turned down by like 15 publishers before this little one company finally picked it up. I wish they would live stream it. And I'm just kind of like, okay, we've been through the era of COVID where we discovered we could live stream stuff and bring the history to more people. But for some reason, they're not live streaming his talk. And I was like, that is the one I want to go to because I'm doing a project about it right now.
Yeah, I don't think he's a big live stream guy. A lot of these people don't like to do a live stream. Earl Hess, we've tried that. He doesn't want to do a live stream either. So no, that's I
don't think it's Jeff Shara's issue with doing a live stream, because he's done a ton of them before. I think it's more like it's Adams County Historical Society doing it, so maybe they don't have the means to be able to do it. So
yeah, who knows? Too bad. I mean, I'm sure people hear all about it. Maybe somebody can just Facebook Live and record it. I'll be up for that. I don't care.
And then they've got the whole, like, some of the actors are there as well. Lynn said she was in Gettysburg over the weekend, bought a round of 4 drinks at the Reliance Mine at Happy Hour. It was $9.
Wow, it's big money. I like the mine. I know a lot of people we know don't really like the mine. I happen to enjoy it.
I love the wine. And
it's got this reputation of being this like seeming underbelly, almost a Notre Dame level of slime. And it's not really true. It's a good little after-hour hotel bar. And it's good.
Yeah,
I like it. We go.
It's a hotel bar. I like the selection of beer they've got. It's always a fun time. Hey, Lisa. But yeah, I wish the one actor, and this is really weird, the one actor I would want to meet was Billy Campbell.
I don't see the fascination with him, but
but because he played Lincoln and he was in Gangs of New York, and I really liked him in both those, or not Gangs of New York. He was in Lincoln, and then he was in Copperhead. And I really liked him in that.
He wasn't in Lincoln. He was in the Booth thing.
Yeah, the Booth assassination movie.
I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis, I'd be glad to meet him because he was way more better than Billy Campbell was. But
I thought Billy Campbell was okay.
Yeah, okay. But I think a lot of people can hopefully get a good crowd for it. I know I think they're doing it at the Heritage, and they're doing it some other place in Adams County, and I know they're doing some different things. So good for them for doing it. Hopefully people can go and get little posters signed and everything.
Well, it's too bad they couldn't get a resurgence in sales of The Killer Angels, because that's the book I'm reading again. It has held up so well. Like there's nothing I would think of, oh, he should have done this with it or whatever, but it's such a good book, even, 50 years later, because 2024 is the 50th anniversary of it. And it's such a good book. And I know our friend Amanda, she's reading it again.
I enjoy it. I definitely enjoyed it.
It's held up so well. That's the thing. And that's what my one teacher and I were talking about, was just how well you could give it to like a teenager or college student today, and they would probably enjoy it. Not a lot of books that for that age could you say that about.
No, it's a novel and it's good. And there are some people, if you go on some of the Facebook pages, they talk about it, people get a little butthurt, a little their diaper's a little wet here because the historical situation is not 100% accurate, and that may be true, but it doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. I mean, you can. Well, you can certainly read it and notice there are little things about it, but it doesn't mean you can't like it. And that's the problem, is if you want to see an actual documentary, there's probably documentaries you can read. There's a million books about it that are more accurate.
Well, he says, like Michael Shara says in the introduction, this is my own telling of it, kind of thing. Like he was looking at primary source documents for a lot of it. I mean,
there wasn't anything really blatantly factually wrong, but the little things here, you could, Chamberlain wasn't at near the angle. I mean, he wasn't at big round top either. He was more in the back near the middle, but yes, he wasn't there. They really embellished the Armistead Hancock relationship, to hell and back. They really did that. They left out a lot of significant players. There was George Meade, the commanding general, has really one line in the entire movie.
So damn dark in here.
And so you can look at it, but again, that's the story that Michael Shara told to choose. He was heavily focused on the Confederates versus the Union, and he told the personal stories. I mean, obviously, the Lee character is going to be big, but I mean, yeah, there's little things about it, but you can, if you're looking at the movie Gettysburg as your primary source about learning of the Battle of Gettysburg, then you got a problem, because that's ridiculous. That's like watching Star Wars and because you want to learn about NASA. I mean, it's just not true. But I mean, you can watch it and realize there are aspects of the battle you might be attracted to. Because I know for a fact there are people I know who watched the movie Gettysburg, and that got them. That was their gateway drug into the battle.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Like I know, like MJ, she loves the movie. She's on here right now, by the way. Hey, MJ.
Hey. But I mean, you can watch the movie and you can enjoy it. But if it gives you the thirst of knowledge to grab a book, you may read Trudeau or Sears, you graduate to Fonz or Coddington or any of them, and good for you if you do. But I mean, it's going to create what it does. The movie really created that, and the Ken Burns documentaries sparked the interest in the Battle of Gettysburg as well as the overall Civil War. And it's up to you, the viewer, if you saw the movie, to either say, okay, cool, or be able to really go into it. But I mean, it's not this historically disaster that people think it is. There are some things there are some gray areas. There are some, the Buster characters, but we've said before, Buster Kilrain may not have physically lived, but there are hundreds, if not more, of Buster Kilrains in that Union Army who were just like him. Why he chose to get shot twice in the bloody armpit, I mean, why they did that, we'll never know. It's just a random injury. And I think when you look at some of the things, I mean, certainly, if you're really into it, if you study the Civil War and the battle, especially the New England part, like we started to do a lot of Maine. Sergeant Tozier was not a new sign up. He was someone who was with the 20th all along. He was actually a pretty integral part of it. So little things like that you can pick up on. But you still enjoy it, right?
Yeah, it's a great, like I said, it's a great book and it's a great movie. And it's, it got so many people, it sparked their interest in the Civil War. And I know there was somebody like recently that was like on one of the serious sites saying like, I can't watch this movie because it's so inaccurate. I'm like, dude, it's
more accurate than it's inaccurate. But if you're one of these people who, sits there and your face cracks when you smile because you have no goddamn personality, and you're going to sit there and get all butthurt and get all about the
people fact. Are saying long live Buster Kilrain.
All right, but if you're gonna have that attitude, then you're missing the boat with life anyway. First of all, have a Coke and a smile, Mary. I say that to you all the time.
No, you
right? is just sitting there in the pouring rain at Mikey Stadium on Saturday trying to
Yeah.
figure out, why the hell we're sitting there. But you can enjoy the fun of it. And then you can pick up the things, because if you could see the movie and you realize what the historical inaccuracies are, and I'll tell you this, Mary, it's the movie Gettysburg is significantly more historically accurate than Glory is.
Yep.
People don't like to hear that, but it's true.
No, I know that. And I mean, the book is real people. And it's like, the one thing about the book is that you're getting inside the head of these, it's an imagined conversation, but the reason why no one would pick it up to publish it is because everybody had war fatigue in 1974 from the Vietnam War. So that's why Shara kept getting turned down. And then finally, this little publishing company picks it up, only does a print run of like 3,500 copies or something like that. And it doesn't actually become a bestseller until the movie was released.
I mean, that's American society. Why,
but that's
Rodney Dangerfield said, back to school, why see a movie, read a book when you see the damn movie?
But that's the thing is the book became an instant bestseller when the movie came out because it was based off the book, and the book has sold 3 million copies. Most of it since the movie came out, which is pretty cool.
I mean, and there are scenes in the movie that aren't in the book, and and usually it's the other way around. The scene where he's up there in the Buster is talking to Chamberlain about the whole Killer Angel. A lot of that stuff's not even in the damn book. They put the stuff in there. And they definitely, and you can see the director's cut with all the extra stuff, which is
some of it is word for word from the book, though. That the Henry Harrison scene is a lot of that is like, because I can hear his voice doing that.
But I mean, think about it. How many movies can you think about it? 30 years later, people are still talking about having reunions about. I mean, besides all the, I'm sure they do a Star Wars one. You probably know that more than I do. But I mean, it really is a testament to how good the movie is. That how many? I mean, I realize that there's not millions of people all lining up to, to go see that. But enough people are that the actors are coming back into town. Now, admittedly, it's not Martin Sheen, it's not Jeff Daniels, it's a lot of the B people, the B-level people, but they're still coming.
But that's so cool. And like LC said, he loves the movie, but he's still butthurt over No Culp Hill, but he still loved it and he was involved.
Well, I mean, here's the thing too. And we said this a million times with Gettysburg. It's long enough as it is. Yeah. There's 26 minutes of marching. And I counted one time because I got nothing else to friggin' do. But you can count, and they could have cut that out and they could have thrown in Culp Hill. But again, you don't have Dave Ireland, you don't have George Sears Green, you don't have any of that. You don't get Marilyn Stewart, but you also don't have Colville. You have from the first Minnesota. You also don't have much of Triangular Fields. You have a little bit of Devil's Den, not too much. Pickett's Charge. They spend way too much time with the big theatrical music, and they're all marching out like it's the Rose Bowl parade. I need to find someone who's going to get me James Lancaster's autograph. By the way, I need to make that happen because I'd like that.
I'd like Billy Campbell.
Fremantle. That someone's going to do that for me. But I like the movie. I think it's good. I think I'm glad they're doing something special for it. We can't get down for it, unfortunately. I wish we could. But that's the reality. So hey, whatever.
But we did get to do some history this weekend. We went to West Point, which was really amazing to see. Evening AQ.
Hey, no, that's a cool place. I mean, I've been there a couple times, and I think that was your first time there, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'd never been to West Point before. So we drove in Friday and we went to the West Point Museum, which is obviously not on the campus because you can only go on the campus if they're having a special event. And the museum is very well done.
No, I mean, the museum, it's not just obviously the Civil War. It goes back really for all the wars. It's just an overall war museum, but they got a lot of cool stuff there. And they got a lot of cool stuff. And it's free. You can go to the museum; it doesn't cost anything, So they have it's a real pretty building, and there's a lot of. I'm sure a lot of people here have been into it, but they've got Napoleon's sword. You can go see that. They've got some Civil War stuff. They got a lot of Robert E. Lee, a lot of Stonewall Jackson. Yeah. They have a lot of Confederate stuff. People, despite what people like Ty Sedgley say, Mary, there still is a lot of Confederate stuff at West Point. So sorry, Ty. Better luck next time.
Lee's picture from when he was superintendent is hanging up there. But then when we went on the campus, you're walking in the footsteps of where these people were, these superintendents, like Lee, Hardee, Howard, Beauregard, all
I
these.
mean, they're gonna. I mean, the thing, if you've been to West Point, okay, and you know a lot of people have, um, you realize right off the bat they're very focused on their history. They
Yeah.
like their history, and there are little things here and there that aren't there that I remember being there from last time, admittedly. But again, you're going to see a lot of balance, and it's not
Yeah.
all Civil War. I mean, there's a plaque they have, like a monument, that talks about secession, and it talks
Mm.
about the verbiage on it is really cool because it talks about the Confederate, so the Southern cadets, the Northern cadets, and the painful struggle they had. It talks about that, and then it breaks down the major battles. It does Antietam, it does Gettysburg. There's a few that talk about it. And there are little things like that. They've got if you go to the Gettysburg, if you go to the West Point Museum, there's a plaque that talks about secession in the Civil War. And I don't want to say it's very lost causey, but it talks about the Southern cadets fighting for it doesn't mention slavery, it doesn't mention, it just talks. So you can be a Southerner and go to West Point and still appreciate it. And you can be a Northerner and you can still appreciate it too. But again, it doesn't whitewash the history. It doesn't make a lot of stuff go away, but it does talk about it respectfully in a way where you can still appreciate it, and they still appreciate their history. I mean, we saw Hardy Lane right off the bat, and he was a very influential person in West Point. But it's a cool place. It's a real cool place. The cemetery is fantastic. You mentioned, you hinted this before. The problem with West Point is unless there's a sporting event going on, you're a visiting prospective student or cadet, or you sign up for a specific tour, you can't get on the campus. It's a military base. And you go through, they check your ID, there's military police at the gate. It's like trying to get to any military base you might have near your house there. But if you go when West Point football's playing and parking's for free, you can get a parking pass. You can go onto the West Point campus. You can get on there as early as 6 o'clock in the morning, and you have free run of the entire place, completely unsupervised. You don't even have to go to the football game if you don't want to, but you can go to the cemetery. You can walk the campus. You can go to the plane. You can see the cadet review. You can see all kinds of stuff. You can see the dorms, the barracks. You can kind of go anywhere, because I know if you go with a formal tour, they're going to guide you where they're going to guide you. Yeah. So if you want an opportunity to see West Point without having to be pulled and prodded wherever you go when the football team is playing, and you can do whatever the hell you want. And literally,
the cemetery was really cool. There's Buford is there, Custer, Kilpatrick, Cushing, Thomas J. Wood. That was the one I definitely knew I wanted to see, because he's just he's such an interesting figure in the Civil War that nobody talks about. And he has all these points where he's put in these positions that are really tough, like Chickamauga and then at Pickett's Mill. So it's pretty cool seeing that. MJ said you can get on the base. You need to go through background check online. I think that's
that's the thing.
Because they do.
But I'm telling you, if Army is playing Troy University next Saturday, okay, if you go online and you go on the website and you get a pass, you sign up for a free pass. You don't even need to go do any of that. Just go on campus and knock yourself out. I've got to be there a couple of different times now, and it's just an awe-inspiring place to go. It's a beautiful little area, with the mountains and the river. Now it was raining for a lot of while we were there, unfortunately, and that's how it was. But you can definitely go without doing any kind of special deal, like sending in personal information if you're concerned about that. Just get a parking pass for on a football game day and go to campus. Go to the game. The games are fun too. The
game was really fun. Yeah, the game was really fun. LC said the Naval Academy is more accessible, apparently.
Well, I'm sure it is. I haven't been to Annapolis in forever, but I mean, I remember bits and pieces about it. But West Point, and the museum is off campus. You don't need to do anything with that. You just got to pull up and walk in. But your taxpayers are paying for it, so you paid your admittance on April 15th for the museum, so last April, so you can just go walk in. But yeah, that's how you do it. It's a great opportunity to go see it. Now we were the only ones for the most part in the cemetery that entire morning. We were there for a while.
Yeah, because there's a lot of Civil War graves to see in there.
No, and there are, and you look at the big boys, Buford and Kilpatrick. But I mean, Julian Weir, if you know, speaking of Gettysburg, commanded the 5th U.S. Artillery. On July 2nd, he fought until the 19th Maine kind of bailed him out. His grave is there as well. There's a lot of really good ones. Obviously, Alexander Webb, speaking of Gettysburg, he's buried there too. Obviously, Alonzo Cushing, and you can go on arounds and arounds and arounds. Thomas Ruger, we saw Thomas J. Wood.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ones you can go. It's kind of like a who's who of Civil War, Civil War people. And for if you don't, even for the non-Gettysburg people, we saw Egbert Vallet's grave. Remember that?
Yeah.
He has a big he was a Civil War guy. He was a state representative from New York, so people don't really know too much about him, part of the Second US Regular. But he's got a big like a pyramid.
Yeah.
With 2 sphinxes guarding. This guy must have come for some cash.
Yeah,
he's a funny
he
dude,
must have
though.
been really into himself, because I said to you, I'm like, didn't the Egyptians build pyramids because they thought the pharaohs were gods on earth and it was their way of getting back into heaven or something? It's like,
well, you know what's interesting about Vili
Hmm.
is he dies around 1901, 1902, somewhere around there, but he was scared to death of being buried alive. It was his big fear. So in his he's not buried below ground. He's buried in a big pyramid thing, but inside of his sarcophagus, I guess you'd have it, he had a phone put in that he could buzz, and it would buzz the superintendent's house to let him know he was still alive. Come get me.
Oh my God.
And so that's kind of who Vili was, kind of a weird dude like that. Obviously the phone call never came, but that if you go, it's like Mary Baker Eddy over here in Mount Auburn, right?
She had the phone put in, right?
She had the phone put in too. Now, if you go to Westport and you go see Vili's grave, and you can't miss it, it's the only pyramid in the cemetery. You could peek in the door and you could see a sarcophagus, and his wife's there next to him, and he has a cement effigy of himself, lying there in state. And inside with him is a phone, or
that's crazy.
Yeah, or some kind of communication device that he had. It's just one of those stupid parts of history. It's just kind of
it's interesting though.
Yeah, no, it definitely is, because these people are people, but definitely check it out. Definitely go to West Point. It's probably, it's about 3 hours from where we are. It's probably about the same from Gettysburg. It's probably halfway point, but go check it out. It's a fun place.
Miranda was wondering if they had a lot of Benedict Arnold stuff there.
Not really.
No. Don't know if they're fans of Benedict.
No, I guess when you're trying to sell the place, that doesn't really do it. We didn't see too much Benedict Arnold stuff. There was a pretty good amount of Rev War. We saw, obviously we saw they have a big George Washington statue on campus. They've got a lot of Civil War. There's a Sedgwick statue. Yeah. Right. No, not Sedgwick. It was Sykes. It was George Sykes statue.
No, it's Sedgwick.
Was this?
Yep.
I think it's a Sykes one there too.
We saw Sykes' grave.
Maybe that's what it was. But he's there, Grant, obviously.
Sedgwick.
But there's a lot of, like I said, there's Stonewall Jackson stuff's there. There's Hardee stuff there. There's Lee stuff there. It's still all there. But it's definitely worthwhile going to and just seeing some of this stuff. I think it'd be, there's one person I work with who went to West Point. There's only one guy. And he says it was a blast. He says he did his Army time and he got out. And now he works in finance. But I bet you that's an amazing place to go.
Yeah. All the cadets just seem to be, I don't know. Everybody was really, really nice though.
Well, they're all just college kids all jumping around at the football game and acting like morons in the crowd.
Oh, someone asked, did we see, I can't pronounce the name. Coscu. I can't pronounce the name. It's some chain from the Rev War. You can read it in the comments. I can't pronounce it.
I did check on. I was just because I was chair. No, we didn't get a chance to do a lot of that. I know you're talking about. We didn't see it. Most of our stuff we walked around. We went to Grant Hall a little bit and checked out some of the Grant stuff. But we were there for the football games. We were only there for a little while. But there's plenty to see. But if you go there, it'd be fun to go there on a day when the football team is playing and you don't get it and you just don't get tickets and just walk the campus the whole day and go check everything out. Because once the cadet parade begins and ends at 9:00 in the morning on the plane, once that's over with, you can get throughout the whole campus. They keep you away from the main campus area until probably 10:00 in the morning. Then it's a free for all. Yeah. But the cemetery is a little bit off of that, so you can get in there as soon as you're on campus.
Next time I want to go to the library because we didn't get to see the library, unfortunately.
No,
That was
no,
what
but
I
it's,
want. I wanted to go into the library. But it was a great visit. Really, really awesome. Yeah, David Maxwell said Annapolis is more fun.
no, I actually worked with a guy years ago who went to Annapolis. He enjoyed it, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're college kids, and just walking.
Right.
It's a very patriotic, to say the least, place, and it's tough not to feel it when you're walking through there because it's such
Yeah.
it's just steeped in hate and patriotism.
Mhm.
But it is funny if you've been to the campus, you would think you would think the name of the school is Beat Navy because it's all you see everywhere.
I know there's like the Beat Navy house.
The superintendent's house has Beat Navy on it.
Yeah, and that was cool seeing the superintendent's house. Because I overheard one of the tours talking about him, and then we realized, like, holy shit, that might have been the house that, like, Lee was living in, that Hardy was living in, that Howard would have lived in when he was
Yeah.
superintendent.
And the commandant's house is right next door. The
Yeah.
one who handles all the discipline. And that's where Lee would have been there too.
Yeah, which is it's like, wow, this is really, really cool. And it's kind of like it's got its own hospital there. But it's really, really worth going to see the campus.
Yeah, no, if you can do it, do it. The cemetery is definitely worthwhile. We spent a long time. You could spend more people could spend hours in that cemetery.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of cool people like Norman Schwarzkopf's buried there, and there's a lot of contemporary military people.
Well, I found a guy from the War of 1812 that died.
Oh yeah, of course there are. Yeah,
that died fighting at the Battle of Fort Erie, in Upper Canada, which I was like, oh, this is really. I was like, this is really cool. Like,
yeah, and of course there was, we saw George Custer's grave, and there was that, I love you, your friend James Hessler note that was attached to it. We saw that. So that was pretty cool. So he must have been there recently, but no, but it's definitely cool. So yeah, so go check it out. It's pretty cool.
Elsie just said Reynolds was the commandant at one time too at West Point. So
yeah, that's like what I mean. As far as best I can tell, I have no reason to think otherwise. It's all the same house. It's all the same same houses.
Well, and two, I joked around about this, but there was more mentions of Oliver Otis Howard at West Point than there is at Gettysburg at either Adams County Historical Society or the Visitor Center. There's like no mention of Howard there at all. You wouldn't even know he was like at the battle and played a significant role. But at West Point, he's mentioned, and it's very positive because he was, I guess, is it called superintendent or commandant?
It's two different things.
Yeah, but
there's the superintendent, there's the commandant.
But he was superintendent, right?
Who was?
Howard.
Howard was superintendent.
Yeah. And he gets mentioned there, and what they talk about a lot with him is not Civil War. It's more of his Reconstruction and Freedmen's Bureau that they talk about more when he's mentioned. Andrew AQ was like, what did you think of Butterfield's grave?
Butterfield's grave, if he's after Villie's grave, was the most impressive one. I mean, he definitely thought very highly of himself. A lot of those bugle calls definitely helped pay for that, because that's a beautiful one. And he definitely got his money's worth for that grave. I was going to mention him, and it's actually right next to Villie's grave.
Mm-hmm.
So you could check both of those out. But yeah, there's a lot of cool people you can go and kind of check out and see. And if you know your Civil War history, like most people here do, you can it's kind of a who's who. And it's, some of them have like Thomas J. Wood has all the battles on it. Thomas Ruger has all the battles on it. But then there are some that are very subtle. Alexander Webb doesn't say too much. Even Buford, he's got a beautiful monument, but he doesn't say too much too.
Some of that was just that was put up, his men paid for it or whatever. And, Buford's been there since December of 1863. So almost 160 years that he's been buried at West Point. But it was cool seeing his grave, Thomas Wood's grave, like all of that. And like you could just spend hours in there, like wandering around. And I kind of like, when we go back again, I want to look more for more of the 1812 vets, or the ones that fought in that war.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't been, it's kind of like Arlington, where most of the Civil War guys are kind of in the same general area.
Yeah.
I mean, Kilpatrick, Buford, and Cushing are all neighbors.
Yeah.
You want to call it that? Ruger's right there with them too. But some of the other ones, Julian Weir's little setback where Custer is. So yeah, in Butterfield is a little further more towards the modern section, but yeah, but check it out. It's a cool place, and it was good to see the story of the Civil War told, not in a judgmental way.
Yes.
It explained, it talked about the great calamity, and it talked about, all this stuff, but it didn't go into, it's not very lost causey, and it's not very just causey. So
Yeah,
if you can go there,
middle.
whether you're, Johnny Reb, or you're, Billy Yank,
Yeah.
you can go there and appreciate it and not feel like your side's being slighted or embellished. And that's what's cool about West Point. They've done it right. They really have.
Yeah. Oh, Gentili asked if there was any Wesley Merritt stuff at the museum, because he was a superintendent post-war as well. And
there was.
we did see his grave.
We saw his grave too.
Yeah.
He's actually not far from Cushing. But
Yeah.
no, yeah, there's this stuff. Oh, the only downside of the whole thing was Gouverneur K. Warren's field glasses from Gettysburg are there, and they were taken away, temporarily removed, which broke my heart, because that's what I really wanted to see. But they have in the Civil War section, but they have a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
They have a lot of Gouverneur K. Warren things. There's obviously one of his relatives. I think it was Susan Warren. It says on consignment by Susan Warren. So some family member donated a lot of the stuff to the museum. So if you like Gouverneur K. Warren, West Point your place, because a whole bunch of his stuff there. Whole bunch of stuff.
I am a fan. That's why I'm not a fan of Sheridan. Gentili just said, sorry if you mentioned already, he's got Bluey blurring in the room.
Yeah, and his kids aren't even home, which makes it even weirder. He said, Bluey. Anyway, but that's cool. So yeah, so go and check that out. So we had a lot of fun doing that. Yeah. So, we got to record last week, Mary. We got to an episode. We did the Battle of Shepherdstown, which I think is as well as the Battle of Boteler's Ford, which I think is definitely a worthwhile study. I think it really kind of ties the Battle of Antietam together into a nice bow. It kind of really tells the post-battle story. And there's not a lot of the Antietam retreat, or really the Antietam retrograde, out there. So it's good to talk about it, because I think it's one of those very misunderstood situations, to say the least.
Yeah, and it's there. Well, Dan Vermillion's book about Antietam, he has a chapter on Shepherdston.
What do you call him?
I can't say his last name. Vermilion.
You call him Vermilion?
Yeah, Vermilia.
He's an Indians fan like you. You should know his information.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I did not read the book. You read that book, but I know he's written a book on Antietam. I know he talks about it, but there's a lot of cool
very
things.
Much like, he does talk about what you mentioned about the whole, just that you need to look at it a certain way, that nobody in fact thinks that, McClellan had a plan and it was a good one. He did stop Lee from crossing.
No, the thing, like anything else we talk about, like anything else, there's an old saying, man makes plans and God laughs, right?
Yeah.
Or something like that. But you talk about the Battle of Antietam ending on September 17th, and right off the bat, McClellan wants to go at him again. He wants to go, but he's got to wait for Alexander Humphrey. He's got to wait for Darius Couch, because they're not there yet. And you hear the Stephen Sears of the word talk about how he had these extra corps he didn't use. And it's sort of true to a point, but he also didn't have them all.
Yeah.
He's going to use the Fifth Corps to Fitz-John Porter from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, by the way, Mary. Good New Englander, Fitz-John Porter, despite the fact they got court-martialed and all that, but that's New Hampshire for you. But he's going to wait for them, and he's going to try to chase him down. And you have that stalemate on the 18th where Lee and McClellan are staring at each other, waiting for something to happen, and really doesn't. But Lee's not done. He's gonna fall back across Boteler's Ford. He's going to kind of regroup, get his men together again, catch their breath, check in. And then he's going to move to Williamsport. He's going to go upstream to cross over there. But by the time he gets there, there's a battle from the 19th and 20th at Shepherdstown. Jeb is gone because he's going up to Williamsport. And when he gets there, he finds that he's got the 6th Corps to deal with, and he's got the Union cavalry, so he can't cross. So McClellan kind of trumps him. He kind of, he blows up the whole plan, and Lee does finally fall back to Winchester, and they call it a day. So, that narrative that McClellan sat there and didn't do anything is just not factually true. Now, you could say that he went to Harper's Ferry McClellan did, and
Yeah.
he could have went and got him there. But again, he's going to wait for supplies, and it's getting
Yeah.
cold, and they decide not to do it, and then he gets fired, and they
Yeah.
bring in Burnside. So, but I mean, he did plan an attack on the 18th. He did attack on the 19th. He did, it was a recon in force, primarily using the Fitzgerald Porter's Fifth Corps. You have a really, really good day by A.P. Hill here and Stonewall Jackson. But again, Lee doesn't get a chance to continue that campaign into Pennsylvania because of what McClellan does at Williamsport.
Yeah.
And that really, Williamsport's where the Maryland campaign of 62 ends. It doesn't end it in Antietam, it doesn't even end at Shepherdstown. No. But if you go to Shepherdstown, which is a great little city, by the way, not for nothing. If you go to Williamsport, you can see, because it's almost pristine of what these guys, you still see the old cement factory, all the remains of it.
Elsie said he always goes there, so it's a great town to visit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. And a lot of the great stories about this, come from Confederates. Henry Kidd Douglas writes a really good narrative of Antietam, Shepherdstown. So does James Longstreet.
Yeah.
McClellan doesn't write too much about it, but Douglas, he's one of Stonewall Jackson's staffers. He wrote that really good book I wrote with Stonewall. They said he was the most handsome man in the Confederacy, Mary. So if you like handsome men, you can look up Henry Kidd Douglas. But again, he does a lot to kind of talk about the post-war McClellan, 1885, when he goes right before he dies, and he goes to the cemetery, and he's kind of shooting the shit and hanging out with the guys, telling war stories with the Union and the Red veterans, and it's just very humanizing to him, because you see him with his little hand in his jacket and he's very stern, and he's kind of laid back and joking with the guys, and it kind of shows a different type of side of George McClellan, I think, that people read about.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, we released this episode and we did take some shit from people, like people just responding saying like McClellan sucks, and it's like, can you at least just give the episode a listen? Because people are so like, there's some that are just, they will die on the hill that McClellan was terrible, all based off, what certain scholars have written about him. And
oh yeah, well, I mean, and that's okay. I mean, everybody has their own opinion, and knock yourself out. But I mean, look at make sure you know the whole story of it. Maryland campaign, really, when you think about the fact of the condition of the Union Army after Second Manassas, the fact that anybody, McClellan notwithstanding, is able to put that army together again to get to Antietam, to Sharpsburg, fight, to push him over again and keep him out. That story doesn't get told enough. But people will think he should have finished the job, but it just didn't happen that way.
No, because he needed supplies and he wasn't getting them. And I think he ran his army pretty well. The thing is that, both Lee and McClellan are in a really difficult place post Antietam. They're both beaten up pretty badly after that battle. And for them to even for McClellan to say, okay, we're going to keep going, that's really something. Like, he's not just sitting on his ass.
Well, he has that quote, where he told Fitzgerald Porter, going into the 19th, basically, he says, go and paraphrase, basically go and fight them. Do not, if you have a chance to beat him, do not spare any man nor spare any horse. He's telling them to go for it. But the only problem is, and this is a double-edged sword of sending the cavalry to Williamsport. When you're going to do a recon in force, we talked about this before. It's what Buford, what Reynolds were supposed to do at Gettysburg, right? So you're going to you're going to go forward. You're going to have your cavalry lead. You're going to see the enemy. You're going to get their numbers, see what they're up to, and then kind of fall back and go back to base to report. And that's what McClellan wanted to do, to see what he was dealing with. But he sent his cavalry to Williamsport. So you're going to send in your infantry on this recon in force by themselves, which is not the end of the world. But again, it was kind of fell apart at that point. And when you're talking about Pendleton, he's in charge of holding Butler's Ford, and he has got 44 guns, which he really has 33, and he takes off once the first U.S. sharpshooters come in the second match, the Andrews sharpshooters in the 4th Michigan. Once they come across the Butler's Ford, he's going to take off, and he's going to tell Lee he lost all 44 guns. He had no idea, because he left the game early, right? And it's Stonewall Jackson who says, we're going to go get the guns, and he takes the A.P. Hill's division without telling Lee. Lee's going to wake up in the morning on the 19th and just go, where the hell everybody go? They're all gone. Jackson's going to do this. And this is where Jackson doesn't get enough credit for this one, by the way. We rip on Stonewall a lot for all the 7 days, right? Kernstown. But no one talking, you talk about Stonewall Jackson, you're going to, the good Stonewall, you're talking about Chancellorsville. You're talking about Manassas, you're talking about Second Manassas. You're not going to talk a lot about Shepherdstown because people don't study it. But this was one of his better moments.
Yeah, it was. I know we talked about that in the episode too. And Frank said he always found it fascinating how Lee thought McClellan was the best Union commander. Is there any record of Lee actually meeting McClellan?
Is what?
Is there any record of Lee actually meeting McClellan?
Not that I know of. I mean, Lee died pretty soon after the war.
Yeah.
McClellan was, he took his ball and went home there, and he kind of depowdered there for a while. And McClellan's going to live until 1885, so he obviously outlives him. But Lee did, have a lot of positive quotes to say about him. I've never seen any record of them meeting. If they may have met before the war, perhaps, who the hell knows?
Yeah.
But I don't believe they did so after the war.
No, I don't. You'd think there would be a story. I know Grant and Lee did, right?
Oh, they met at the White House.
Yeah. Is that where
that's a great story.
Is that where Grant made some remark about the railroads and Lee?
Well, no. Lee at this point, he's trying to get financing to build railroads.
Yeah.
And he finds himself sitting at the White House with old President Grant now. And President Grant just wants to talk. He wants to shoot the shit with them, catch up with old Bobby Lee. And Lee doesn't want no part of it. And Grant says, General, we spent more of our life destroying railroads, not building them. Kind of a joke, kind of like a bad joke like you tell that falls on its face. And then Stonewall, and then Lee basically just kind of blows him off and just, thank you very much, and gets up and leaves. And that's the last they ever met. But no, Lee and McClellan, I don't believe so.
That would be interesting to find that out.
Yeah.
We know a couple of people who study McClellan. I'm sure they, like Shanna or somebody probably knows.
Yeah, and McClellan, he's got his warts. He does. But like anything else, there's good and the bad and the ugly. And he's got a lot more good than you think he does.
Yeah, it's very like people get very almost like offended that if you say anything positive about him, and he's probably one of the worst ones, for it to have like, you just say one positive thing and people are like, oh, I don't agree with you on this and I can't for this, this, and this. And it's like, well, if you only are reading Landscape Turned Red as your source for Antietam, it's going to have your view is going to be very slanted towards what Stephen sees.
Or the people who are really the very capital L Lincoln people.
Yes. Yeah. Because
McClellan was somebody who went right at him. And I think a lot of people, you just read, if you're really into Lincoln and you're one of the Lincoln community people, of course you're going to hate McClellan.
Yeah. And the thing is like with the Lincoln biography, it's a Lincoln biography. You're not going to get into, it's going to be a very high level overview of his relationship with the generals in the Civil War. And like, yes, McClellan is obviously mentioned in quite a bit. Biographies I've read, they talk a lot about it, but you won't see Shepherdstown mentioned. You won't see that aftermath. It's, just one of those things where they don't talk about it because that's not the focus of the book. So that's why, like, you've got to read more about it, like read an actual book about McClellan. And there's a couple biographies out there that are positive about him.
No, there certainly are. And I think, the more you read, the better balance you get, because you're going to get a slant view no matter, even if the author's not even trying to, you're going to get his opinion because he's writing about him for a reason. We had Craig Simons on last week, and he talked about Patrick Clayburne, that he didn't know much about him. One of his students at the Naval Academy, they go to Annapolis again. He's going to write a story about Clayburne, like a paper. He's like, this is interesting. And he ends up kind of writing a book that obviously the Stonewall of the West. And he kind of, really becomes his sort of confidant, to tell his story. And that's what happens. He's somebody who points out the flaws. He talks about Doug Hill. He talks about some of the Hinman stuff. Yeah. He talks about some of the negative things about Patrick Clayburne. But again, it gives you a full 360 view of it. In a lot of the books, There are some that are very pro Union general or officer and pro Confederate. And if you read them, you can see the agenda. Maybe it's it's not intentional, but you cannot read a Lee biography by Freeman and not come away with the dude's man crush. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not the first author to fall in love with the subject, but you can read other things to talk about it that are a little more balanced.
Yes.
And that's why reading's so important. It just is.
It is, yeah. And that's like LC says he doesn't like McClellan, but he respects him more than the usual Civil War narrative portrays. And that's it. There's not a lot of respect for McClellan, unfortunately. And you hear the same old arguments. Oh, he was mean to Lincoln. He said nasty stuff. They all did.
Well, no, look, he got pantsed by Magruder
at
Yorktown. Okay, he does make some mistakes. But again, he knew after First Manassas that his army was not ready for prime time. He had to drill them. He had to get them trained, and for the most part, he did. He gets sacked a couple of times, but he gets put in place, and you hear the whole thing about how he denied troops from John Pope, and that's not really 100% accurate. What it was, he was in Washington with his army, the Potomac, and you had Pope over at Second Manassas who got his ass kicked. McClellan comes back in, has to put the whole thing back together again in time. I think it was September 5th of 1862. He gets put in charge again. Yeah. The Battle of Antietam is like 12 days later.
Yeah.
This is how much time he had to get the army ready, and he got them ready.
Yeah, he did.
And he was able to not only, and it was a stalemate of a battle, but he did maintain the field, so he gets credit for the W, right?
Yeah.
But it does allow Lincoln through the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah.
And if you read Longstreet from Manassas to Appomattox, his book, he talks about that great what if we could have beaten McClellan at Antietam, that he says that our president, Jefferson Davis, he'd be sitting with his army today in Maryland, denying Lincoln the ability to do the Emancipation Proclamation, while in his hand he's got us trying to sue for peace to end the war and get independence.
Yeah,
that's why Antietam is a big turning point, and for a lot of different reasons. But you got to give back credit for that. You do, and you have to give credit for him trying to push the envelope on the 18th. But he had to wait for Couch, had to wait for Humphreys. But he does attack on the 19th, admittedly in a recon force, but he does attack. And I think there was too much of that that sports radio mentality where now we got to win now. And you have Lincoln come over and he has that famous picture of him sitting in the tent. McClellan's all looking like a pissed off kid, and that all went down. But it puts pressure on guys like Burnside to come afterwards.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then he gets screwed because Halleck goes into the pontoon boats of Frederick, and Fredericksburg. He wants to attack Lee, and he had Lee. Don't forget too. You had Lee was in Richmond. Yeah. When Burnside wanted to attack originally, and by the time the boats came, he got the rest of his army back, including himself. And they got Marie's Heights, they got Prospect Hill, they defended the whole thing. So again, it's all timing and red tape on a lot of these guys.
Yeah, and there's some, like LC said, Stanton was the bigger issue. David said Stanton is literally the devil, and I would agree. And Frank said, has anyone ever met a pro-Stanton person?
No, Stanton and Halleck. I mean, you can't forget about Halleck because, especially as a member of the very punchable face society, is Henry Halleck. So this is a guy who was in charge of the general-in-chief of the entire army. And he kind of gets put in a corner, gets brought back to Washington, and then the rise of U.S. Grant. But he, like Jefferson Davis, he wants to be in the field. And so he's going to criticize anybody who comes along. Stanton is just a bureaucrat. I mean, he just is. But Halleck was kind of a sniveling little prick. And he's the one that really doesn't get enough really animosity by a lot of people. All the hatred gets put onto McClellan or Rosecrans or those guys. Yeah. I mean, Halleck wanted George Thomas too.
Yeah, they all are going at each other. That's what I tell people is so interesting about studying the Civil War is just all this behind the scenes stuff that is going on. Like they're not all getting along. They all have their own agendas. Grant does. He wants to, president and all that. Someone just said they watched the McClellan episode. Well done. Thank you.
Oh, appreciate it. Yeah, we wanted to do that one for a while and kind of waited until after Antietam, the anniversary for that. But I think it's an important study. I think a lot of people there's not, I mean, there's not a hell of a lot left of Shepherdstown, the battlefield. It's not in the town, it's just south of it.
Mhm.
But you can climb a barbed wire fence like Mary did. You can
I
go visit that
did.
monument.
Private property.
But you can see those cliffs. A lot of the ground where the battle took, where the 118th Pennsylvania fought, that's all neighborhoods now. So you can't really go there and see where Charles Prevost fought with the 118th, and see where those guys with the malfunction guns are trying to shoot. You can't see where that first wave of AP Hill's guys hit, or where Stonewall recon, because it's all neighborhood. But you can still see a lot of the land. You can still see Butler's Ford, which is still there.
Yeah. And it's really worth visiting. Michael said, I really enjoyed the Shepherdstown episode too. As you guys said, it was really so overlooked. I visited the battlefield too, and the town too, and it's a really cool place. So thank you.
There's a great little cemetery in Shepherdstown you can go visit. And there's a lot of Confederate graves, including Henry Kidd Douglas.
Yeah.
If you go, if you like to visit graves and use the Find a Grave site, I will warn you that the grave site for Douglas in that system
is not correct.
Wrong. You have to find it, and it's not even close to right in the front. There's a big area with Confederate soldiers' graves. There's a monument. He's not buried near there. He's buried towards the back of the cemetery. We found it though. That was exciting.
Yep. It was fun. It was a fun adventure.
When did we go there? Remember?
November of 2021.
Is that long ago, is it?
Yep.
God, time flies. But it's a good battle, and it really is the one that that finishes off the Maryland campaign.
Yeah.
And definitely go to Williamsport. And people visit Williamsport because it's where Lee left after Gettysburg, in where J. Johnson Pettigrew was killed.
Yeah.
But that's also where Jeb was going to try to get across.
Yeah. There's lots of cool stuff to see in that area that is just so very overlooked. And I mean, I enjoyed doing the episode about Shepherdstown. It was really interesting. I didn't know much about it at all. And then, reading in this book I have about Antietam, and then just looking some stuff up about it as well. It's really worth studying and talking about. Nobody talks about it.
No, I don't think they do. Because why would they? Because you know why? Because there hasn't been a lot written about specifically the Battle of Shepherdstown. Yeah. And I remember a couple of years ago, American Battlefield Trust, during the anniversary of Antietam, I think it was 160 of Antietam, so obviously must have been last year. They had, Gary was out there with a couple of people talking about it. And I remember Tom Clemens. Tom Clemens, if you don't know who he is, he's a historian. He is, I don't want to say he's very pro-McClellan, but he's not anti-McClellan. Mm-hmm. So when you hear him speak, he speaks more balanced about it. And he went on and talked a lot specifically about how important Butler's Ford was and how important Williamsport was. Because, if you're going to study a battle or a campaign, you have to take it all the way, the full 9 innings, right? Yeah. And without everything that McClellan and Fitzjohn Porter did, and everything that Stonewall Jackson and Jeb Stuart did, it's over Williamsport and Butler's Ford, respectively, it's tough to understand Lee's mindset, because Lee was go, go, go. Yeah. After he falls back over the Potomac, he's not sitting on his ass doing nothing. No, right? He's ready. He says, Jeb, you go up there to Williamsport. We'll, put the bridges down, get us over there. We're going to get ready. Here we come. And it wasn't until he had to deal with the Union guys initially trying to chase him down. And then by then he realizes Williamsport's blocked and he has no chance. He's stuck. And then he finally does fall back to Winchester, where he grows his army from 36,000 guys, which he was down to about 34,000 guys. And he rebuilds up to 60,000. Yeah. Getting ready to head into what's going to be the Battle of Fredericksburg and all the battles in 1863. So he used the time to charge his batteries too. But Lee was going to go into Pennsylvania heading into the winter with 30,000 guys. So it's maybe for the best that McClellan did block that, if you're a Confederate fan, because he probably was fighting with piss and vinegar at that point, maybe with his heart versus his brain. So it's probably for the best for him that he did fall back. Think about it. Yeah, it's less than a year later that he does manage to get into Pennsylvania, but McClellan stops him, which is, no one talks about that, that McClellan stops him. No, because you said before, the average person, the Civil War person who doesn't really get into the weeds with these things. Antietam happens. AP
Yeah.
Hill shows up, gets pushed back by Burnside. Lee escapes over the river, and he says, "You know what?" McClellan goes, "Whatever, it's on. I have
Yeah.
all these cores sitting here, the 5th Corps and the 6th Corps I didn't really use. The hell with it. Let's just sit back." And that's just factually is not. It's just not
Yeah,
true.
and that's how the narrative. And I'm just okay. So I just in the chat, I just put the name of the book that just has a chapter on Shepherdstown in it, but it's a whole book about Antietam, and it's really good.
By
It's,
Daniel Chameleon.
yeah, it's one of the it's not going to show.
That's a great job you're doing right there.
Yeah,
It's
not
an
gonna show.
invisible book. It's like a Harry Potter book.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, but it's about Antietam, and it's really, really good. It's a very balanced view of it. The other one that I looked in that had nothing about Shepherdstown in it was Fierce Glory, which is a book it's just about Antietam. It's really, really good, but it had nothing about Shepherdstown in it at all.
No, there's not a lot out there. You have to pick and choose. Like I said, a lot of if you want to read a lot about Shepherdstown, I've never read Dan's book, but the Longstreet memoirs and the Kid Douglas memoirs are two great sources for it. The from Manassas to Appomattox for Longstreet, and from the I wrote with Stonewall book from Henry Kid Douglas, because it tells a human story about it.
Yeah.
And you can really talk specifically about how it went. But there are definitely things you learn a lot about them. There's a lot of people, the 118th PA from Philly. These are green soldiers, never fought before. And what surprised you about that was they never even fired their guns, even in training. This is how desperate this was. So when they go to use those Enfields and they pull the trigger, the hammer doesn't hit the percussion cap hard enough, so it doesn't fire. And a lot of the guys from Philly here, these 118th PA guys under Charles Prevost, they just assume that's how it shoots. So you just keep loading, and they think it's firing, and it hasn't. Some guys figured out they were taking rocks and pounding it to try to get him to shoot. And then you have that order. Finally, Fitz-John Porter says, "We're done. We're doing a recon in force. We're going to hit. We're going to fall back, and we're going to call it a day." He sends the order out to pull, to close the umbrella, pull everybody back into Maryland. This Colonel Charles Prevost, Porter's gives the order. He can't find Prevost. He gives them to a line officer and says, "Give these to the boss, your boss. We're going." Prevost gets the order, and he says, "I don't take orders from you. I'm not. You tell Porter if he wants me to leave. You tell him to give me an order directly."
Yeah.
And so meanwhile, his green guys are all getting shot and killed. And 2/3 of the entire Union casualties at the Battle of Shepherdstown are from this regiment, who went into the battle with 737 men, a huge regiment.
Yeah.
And they lost 269 because of a guy who was to have a stick up his ass of protocol. And then you know what happens to Prevost? He gets promoted for it. He gets made a brigadier general.
Of course, that's what always happens.
After getting all those men, really a third of his regiment slaughtered because he didn't like the way he received an order.
Wow. But that's always
That's
happens,
the way it is. It's the way it is.
But so we did that, and our next episode is could very well be our Halloween episode.
Yeah, that's right. It's that time of year. It's Halloween time.
The 4th annual Civil War Breakfast Club Halloween, what do we call it? Extravaganza live from the Boo Barn.
Yeah, with Jen Vincent Price, who just ran her Chicago Marathon this weekend, Mary. How about that?
Yeah. So yes, we know not everybody is into the ghost thing, but we like to do a Halloween episode once a year. It's just kind of
everybody likes ghosts on Halloween.
And it's just a ghost story, but it's I don't know. The ghost tours are fun. They have their place as long as they're done well.
No, you tell everybody likes just campfire stories. You tell the stories and hear about it. So I definitely enjoy it. It's a lot of fun,
Michael mentions one of my favorite books on Antietam is John Michael Priest's Antietam, The Soldier's Battle. It's a minute-by-minute eyewitness account from both sides as they experience in their own words. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's a book. It reminds me a lot of Carol Reardon's book on Pickett's Charge, where she talks a lot about the soldier stories. And Antietam is a monster of a battle, just a monster. But I think like any of these battles, if you study the full campaign, right back to when, September 5th of 1962, when McClellan takes over, Lee's going into Maryland. You have the lost order 150, 191 over where Monocacy battlefield is. South Mountain battle. You have it's a whole narrative, a whole big picture you can tell.
Yeah.
And it's like Gettysburg, where it's got, it's got the Brady Stations of the world, but Antietam's got more meat and potatoes to it. If you look at the whole campaign, the Maryland campaign, and the Gettysburg campaign is just Maryland 2.0.
Yeah.
He does this. He tries the same thing. He goes over to Williamsport. This time it's not covered. It's not protected.
Yeah.
All he does is the plan he wanted to do in September of 62. He does in June of 63. Does the same and pull up the old band, gets them all back together again, and they're going to go the same route. Mm-hmm. And they walk right through a lot of the old Antietam battlefield to get out there.
Yeah.
And so he continues it. So if you look at Gettysburg, it's just a continuation of the Maryland campaign.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that's where he originally wanted to go, right? Was into Pennsylvania.
Right. But the difference, though, is that he doesn't have Jackson this time.
Yeah.
So now instead of 2 corps, he's got 3. So it's a little bit different because he's got more guys and they're all spread out, which is why Gettysburg happens. But really, if you look at this in a big picture, the Civil War is a war of campaigns anyway. That's by definition it is. But if you look at the big picture, Lee runs the same play over and over and over again. If you think about Robert E. Lee, what is it? It's massing on the flank and attacking, massing on the tank and a flank. He does it at Second Manassas. He does it at Chancellorsville. He does it at Gettysburg. It's the same game plan over and over and over again.
It's kind of like Sherman and his always flank attack.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's a great. We were speaking of West Point again. You're talking a lot about Jomini, a lot of Clausewitz.
Yeah,
you got a lot of that. And so these guys are taught a certain way. The problem with Robert E. Lee, kind of like a local football coach around here, is sometimes you don't realize that the game changes and you can't be playing the same goddamn thing every single day. You have to be able to adapt to the times, and Lee really doesn't. He doesn't. Eventually he does to a point, but he still dusts off the old chestnut of trying to hit the flank over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's probably why, and he's running out of men too, so it's kind of unfair to hit Lee with that. But he's very set in his ways on a lot of times. He's not really malleable. And that's
that was Beauregard's problem, was he couldn't get away from those textbooks. He couldn't get away from Jomini and Clausewitz, what they were learning at West Point. And in the Mexican War, Beauregard gets really pissed off at, I think it's, who's he under? It's either Winfield Scott Hancock or John Tyler, I think. I can't remember. Anyway, Beauregard is losing his mind over the fact that they're going to do something that's not written in a textbook. And his commander's like, we have to do it this way. And Beauregard can't get out of that mindset. And that's why, I've mentioned this many times, that Beauregard is like one of my big Civil War what ifs. Like, would he have been a good commander? But it all depends on if he would have been able to evolve away from that textbook warfare, the Napoleonic style warfare, and get to how, Grant and Sherman were thinking about war in 1864. We'll never know, because Beauregard was never put back into play again.
Beauregard is a really good, I don't want to say bureaucrat, but when he ends up in New Orleans later, he's that guy in the office who, if you steal a Coke out of the company for yourself paying a quarter, he's going to go rat you out. He's very into that, and I think he's somebody who. He's somebody who he had a lot of potential, and for different reasons, Davis didn't like him. He did piss Davis off. He justifiably so.
Davis didn't like him at all.
Going to the media with your game plan isn't going to how to endear yourself to the boss. Admittedly. Yeah,
Lee didn't like him either, but he was friends with Johnston and Albert Sidney and Joseph E. Johnston. He was friends with both of them. And what Davis didn't like was the fact that both those guys outranked Beauregard, and they treated him like he was the one in charge. But, for Shiloh, part of that game plan for Shiloh was Beauregard.
Yeah,
that was him coming up with that stuff. And, he's got to be and he gets a lot of fault for being at the back. Well, that's where you're supposed to be as a commander, is at the back. Albert Sidney Johnston is taking a huge risk by riding out in front, right? Look what happens.
No, but I wouldn't really completely agree with that. I think a good commander you gotta be upfront. Your men have to see you
Yeah, that's
leading
true.
them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, and he was that at Shiloh on the second day up
Yeah. He
at
did that.
Hornet's
He did
Nest. You know,
that second day.
and
Yeah.
and I get your point. You want to be you don't want to put yourself recklessly out there,
Hmm.
but you look at guys like Phil Kearney,
Oh, yeah.
Chantilly, right? You
Yeah.
know, he gets killed riding up front. Hazard Stevens, I think he gets killed up front. Longstreet gets shot, with the Wilderness. He's up
Yeah.
front. Not he lives obviously, but affects the rest of his life. He could barely talk.
Yeah.
And when you think about his politics in New Orleans afterwards,
Mhm.
it's remarkable that he was able to do what he
Yeah.
did. But I think you have to know how to be aggressive versus reckless. And I think that's the challenge.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's like, I know Beauregard was out on that second day at Shiloh out front, but I think it was also too, we talked about that in the episode. It was also like, I have to do this now. I have to show myself.
Well, when you take a victory lap and you
Yeah.
tell the big man back in Richmond that you've won, hurrah, and then John Carlos Buell shows up, and the next thing you know, you find yourself screwed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you better win or die trying.
Mhm.
And that happens a lot. Look at Richard Garnett at Gettysburg.
Yeah.
We mentioned AP Hill, leaving Harper's Ferry garrison, to kind of save the Antietam. These guys they're all humans, and they do things for very human and personal reasons.
Yeah.
And if you can get out of that mindset of looking at them like they're these statues who are just these robots. We mentioned the Battle of Shepherdstown. Stonewall Jackson takes AP Hill's division without telling Lee, and puts him in a very precarious spot back at his headquarters, where he put a risk to Lee personally and the rest of the army, but he felt his job was such as a wing commander that he needed to go get those 44 guns that he was told by Pendleton that he lost. 44 guns was a lot of guns. Turns out he only lost 4, which would have been ironic if Jackson was killed there instead of Chancellorsville.
Oh my God, could you imagine?
Because speaking of being in front, the first soldiers, the one who saw the Union soldiers coming across was Stonewall Jackson. He personally reconned that because the cavalry was gone. Right.
Yeah.
So I think to a point you got to be upfront, but at the same time you have to be smart about it.
Yes. Yeah. There's a very fine line. You'll like this. Michael says that his cousin was married to a direct descendant of Beauregard, and her kids have the last name. They're divorced now, but for a while, one of his descendants was part of our family. You knew the descendant too, right?
I used to work with a guy named Sean Beauregard, and this is a while ago now, but I said, by any chance you related to Pierre Gustave Toutant Beauregard? The country goes, oh yeah, he's a great. He knew all about him. He even looked like him a little bit, actually.
Yeah, you said he had like the dark hair.
He I mean, it wasn't like he was a spitting, but you could tell if you knew his name was Beauregard. Maybe it's that psychological thing, the red dress or the blue dress thing, that whole thing from before. But to me it looked like him, but he knew all about him. He says, yeah,
that's really cool. David said that Davis was the CSA's worst enemy, and I agree with him here. Beauregard, or Beauregard, as we call him on here, got a raw deal. I think he definitely did.
No, but he did. But you got to understand that the politics of the thing.
Oh, I know.
When you find out that one of your generals, this is Jefferson Davis, is basically going to the media to saying that, if this guy let me do what I wanted to do at First Manassas, then this whole shit would be over. But he didn't. I mean, it's natural human instinct. If you have a subordinate who's going insulting the boss, you're going to piss off the boss, Mary. It's like you with the Dairy Queen. You know what I mean? If they tell you that we're doing chocolate and strawberry, blizzards, and you come back with the caramel pumpkin, that's going to piss them off. So you got to be smart about it.
Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the reality of it. And we saw that with Rosecrans and Grant too. After Battle of Iuka, same deal. You go to the Cincinnati newspaper talking about Grant disappearing for a couple of days,
Yeah, and but I do still feel bad for Beauregard in some ways, and I think he is like this what if in the Civil War that he could have been a good commander had he been given the chance. And He did, but at the end of the war, he's basically like, Davis is trying to get him like as far away from Richmond as possible. So he's like, you go down to the Western Theater area and stay down there and kind of sort of look after Hood, but not really. And that's the thing that like Davis is disrespecting him just as hard back as what Beauregard did to him with the whole like, you know, he's trying to manage Hood, but he's doing so from a position that is like, he's told, if you go to see Hood, even though you outrank him, you're not in charge of the army, and you can't be in charge of the army. And Hood is supposed to be running stuff by Beauregard, because Beauregard is the one that's supposed to be organizing where the wagons are going to go and where they're going to have their supply base. And he doesn't. He just goes right to Davis instead of Beauregard.
I mean, Davis, he you know, better for us. He likes sometimes. Everybody likes a yes man. Sometimes he loved Hood. He loved aggressive people because, I mean, if you put him on a sodium pentothal back in the day, Davis would tell you he wanted to be in the field command. He didn't want to be sitting at a desk and doing this crap.
Oh yeah.
I mean, Lincoln, they both got their, you know, both got their fingers in the pie a little too much.
Yeah.
Speaking of McClellan, I mean, you're going to send McDowell's division to go chase Stonewall.
Mm.
You're going to leave McClellan all by himself without a whole division during the peninsula without telling him. I mean, of course things are going to fail. And that's just the way it is sometimes. But the devil's always in the details, someone's told Mary.
Yeah.
Remember that? I'm sure I heard that, but I heard it somewhere.
And David said Garnett still trying to reclaim his lost honor because of Jackson.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, you're talking about a guy who you know, and it goes back to the first Battle of Kernstown, where he ends up retreating. And Jackson was not in the front. Jackson was in the back. Yeah. Those old 8th Virginia boys, right? And
was he sleeping again?
I don't know if it's sleeping, but he ends up getting routed by Nathan Kimball and falling back, and he court-martials him for falling back. And again, he must have been quite a doghouse, because, you know, Gettysburg is a full year later, and he was still dealing with that. So, but again, it's the honor of being a soldier.
Yeah. Well, I think Lee tried to tell them like, hey, you guys need to get over it, kind of thing, especially Jackson. Like Garnett, I get why he was pissed off. Like he carried around the court-martial paper for the rest of his, what would be a short life.
Well, Jackson's personality was tough. It must have been very difficult to be a Ewell or a Garnett,
he's a diva,
you know, or an A.P. Hill, because I mean, he was a diva, but I also think, you know, I think there was something wrong there. It was he had something where it was whether it be bipolar or
today
some
it
kind
would be probably autism
or something where I think he was very difficult to read. He was very inconsistent.
Yeah.
Right. And I think having a boss like that must have been very difficult. Had to have been, especially in a military situation.
Yeah. But I mean, who was it? Was it Ewell that was like, I need somebody to write me a clear order? Because Jackson always wrote his orders really clearly. And then when, you know, was it Ewell that was supposed to take the show?
Yeah, that's a Gettysburg. Well, I mean, that whole thing is so overblown. The whole thing would take this hill of practicable. But that's one of those things. But yeah, I mean, Ewell he gets a letter in order to concentrate in the Gettysburg Cashtown area.
Yeah.
And if you haven't been to Gettysburg, I don't know why you wouldn't, but if you haven't been, you'll know that Gettysburg and Cashtown are 14 miles apart.
Yeah.
So where the hell do you meet? And he tells Campbell Brown, you know, does anyone on the general staff know how to write an intelligible order? And of course, someone writes that down. Now that's how we know about it. But he's used to getting very specific orders from Stonewall Jackson. And now he's in Corps Command. This is Ewell now. And so he is giving a little more latitude. And I think some people like to be managed different ways. And I think that was quite a change for them. Because I think some of the guys, he probably enjoyed that little sovereignty, but I think at the same time, he's relatively new. I mean, he had that great success at the Second Battle of Winchester, and Ewell was a stud there, you know, chasing down Milroy and really setting up Gettysburg. But I think what happens is you have to determine, okay, is this the right call? But in certain situations where you know it's going to be a really big battle, you want to know where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the Battle of Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And because of that, you have Robert Rhodes. He's going to get to Oak Ridge. He's going to fire his cannons too early, which they make a pill for, I heard. And that's going to screw up that whole infantry attack. And that's going to make everything piecemeal. And so you have Gettysburg and the Union guys being able to fall back.
Mhm.
And that's what's great about these battles, looking back years later, is you can see the little mistakes that were made.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's because of communication
Oh, yes. Communication, what is it? Communications, weather,
and terrain.
and terrain are
It's
all,
any losing battle, it's always one of those three or a combination thereof.
Yeah.
It always is. And Gettysburg is a who's who of communication errors,
Yeah.
especially on the Confederate side.
well, so is Chickamauga with what happens to poor Thomas Wood. And he gets that order on September the 20th. And he knows what's going to happen if he moves his men, but he has to because he's already he's one step away from being court-martialed by Rosecrans, because Rosecrans and him didn't get along. So he moves his division, and it creates the gap. Just like he was like, "This is what's going to happen if I do it," But what's he supposed to do? Not follow an order?
Yeah. Well, I mean that therein lies the thing. I mean, we talked about Dave McMurtry Gregg. Really ignoring the orders from Pleasanton, which was the East Cavalry field with Custer, basically telling Custer, "I'm going to pretend I didn't see this order. You stay here."
Yeah.
So you have to be able to choose and pick and choose, but you better be right though.
Oh yeah, you better hope it turns out well
Yeah.
for you. David mentions, MJ said Hancock led from the front. David mentions, I'd argue that as far as Army commanders in the American Civil War, Hood was by far the worst, and that includes the fact that Earl Van Dorn, I'm sure that's who he must mean with EVD, was an Army department commander. And then he also says Garnett is one of my favorites from the CSA.
Hey, say we all about Van Dorn. He beat Grant at Holly Springs. Not many people can say they beat Grant, especially him.
EVD sounds like
it's just true though.
I mean, EVD sounds like a STD.
Yeah, definitely.
Which
That's
he probably
exactly what
had.
it was.
Which he probably had.
Beat
before
the
he-
Union, steal their women. EVD.
And
Good-looking
Travis,
guy, though.
Travis
Sharp
is
looking
on
guy.
here. And
Oh,
Travis,
Travis.
Travis
I was
is
like,
in Houston
sorry.
travels. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just say Travis. I maybe I'm dreaming this, but I thought, did I see you went down to Andersonville? Did I see that? I thought that's where he went.
Our
I could
friend
be-
Ben was just down there.
Maybe it was Ben. Somebody I know was in Andersonville.
Travis,
But Travis,
is traveling as well.
yeah, Travis was out and about
yeah.
too. So yeah, that was pretty cool to say.
Yeah, and Travis mentions that Hood is good and aggressive general. I think Hood is when he gets in command, he's just not he's good division and he's good corps. But Simons put it so well. He just was how did he put it? It was he was
I think he said he sucked.
yeah.
Actually, no. I mean, everyone has their ceiling.
Yeah, and that was
Everyone has their ceiling. And Hood was great brigade, really good division, good corps. But that was the end. That was the deal. You hit your ceiling. He hit his ceiling, and that he should have stayed at corps. But he promised to be aggressive, and Davis liked him, and that's kind of where it goes, and that's the deal. But everybody has their everybody has their limits no matter what they do.
That was Davis's, or that was Hood's limit right there, is he could not command an army. Travis said yes, he was at Andersonville.
See, you know what? I knew that, Mary. I knew, and you said I was wrong.
No, I said it might have been Ben, because Ben was.
No, you said it was Ben. So Travis, I was right. I'm glad you enjoyed Andersonville. If you have not been, is a fantastic visit. It's a very solemn, very haunting place. Probably the most haunting place you can go in the Civil War that a battle wasn't fought in. But I'm sure he enjoyed it, and it's out there though. You got to go. You got to want it.
Oh yeah.
You got to want it. It's way out in the middle of nowhere. But
what's it called? Americus,
right outside of Americus, Georgia, home of the Ruby Tuesdays.
Yes, that's where we. That was all that was there. Aki mentions Davis was also running out of good commanders. It was that, or they just didn't want to command. Hardee was like, "I'm not commanding this army."
Well, I think you get to a point where you did your best, you feel like you did your duty, and they were pissed off when Hood got the big chair. And
Yeah.
Hardy's like, the hell with this. I'm not going to do this.
Goodbye.
You know, but you see that a lot. You get to a point when it's like you have a job and you're working hard, and he literally wrote the book,
Yep.
right, with
Unpack it.
logistics. So he's
Yep.
not like he's some kind of clown here. He's not some sort of slapdick guy who's trying to make his way through it. This is a guy who has a lot of cred, a lot of credentials, and then you find out freaking John Bell Hood gets the job over you.
Yeah, because he's
I mean,
working behind the
it's
scenes.
just think of your own job.
Yeah.
Someone who you probably don't like too much, who kisses the boss's ass, gets the job you want.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? He's going on LinkedIn. He's getting the hell out of here. That's what he did.
Hardy
Right?
on LinkedIn.
He did. That's what Hardy did. Went on LinkedIn and got a job. He took off, gave his notice. And so, and he probably good he did. He avoided Franklin, you know.
But who knows if Franklin would have happened if Hardy had been in charge.
Well, that was the thing. He didn't stick around in a subordinate role and play along, because might have been 7 Confederate generals killed at Franklin.
Yeah, like he might have spoken up about it. He might have been like, dude, this is ludicrous. Beauregard tried to tell him that. Beauregard tried to tell him the plan was not good.
No, but Hood is the boss.
But Beauregard's like, what do I know?
Yeah, but he knew that he got that position because he was told he was going to be aggressive.
Yeah.
So he's going to go chase Schofield through Spring Hill, through Franklin, all the way into Nashville, because I think that's what he felt that he was put in that job to do. Hardy wasn't going to be able to talk about that.
No. And Michael mentions that he put in a vote for General Loring as one of the worst in the CSA.
Really? Okay. I mean, Loring's, he's certainly not the greatest. But there's a lot of, on both sides there's a lot of awful people. We were talking about the battle here. You want to look at William Pendleton.
Yeah.
I mean, William Pendleton if you don't know much about William Pendleton,
Didn't
this
he
is a
just
guy.
leave?
Well, yeah, he's in charge of artillery. He's from Richmond originally, and he's the one who gets the 4 guns for VMI.
Yeah.
And he ends up basically rising through. He gets in charge, not for long, but I think it was March of '62. He gets put in charge of the entire artillery in the Army of Northern Virginia, and he's a guy who he's one of these religious types, kind of like Howard, right, or Jackson, where he determines, because they're using these pendulum hosses and these ordnance glasses measuring trigonometry for artillery, that because it's perfect science, that it must be from God. And that's how he sees it. And he gets religion in his head. And they call him Parson Pendleton. And he's also the rector at that church in Lexington. And so when Lee does eventually die, he ends up presiding over the funeral. But Pendleton was somebody who he's an underrated and competent too, like a lot of them.
Yeah.
And the Union has them. I mean, you want to stay with the letter, the letter P. Okay. And you just talk about Pleasanton.
Oh my God, another punchable face.
You could be like Sesame Street, just do letter P. Incompetent generals in the Civil War.
You know who
Pendleton
else
and Pemberton.
William Soy Smith.
Soy Smith was another one. Now he had his good moments too. But when you talk about the Meridian campaign, right?
Where he was like, doesn't even show up where he's supposed to be.
No, he gets his ass handed to him. He gets slapped around by Nathan Bedford Forrest, and he turns and runs like hell. And leaves Sherman.
Where are you?
Dude, was my car. Where'd everybody go? And so there's a lot of that. But Soy Smith was better when he did the with Grierson.
Yeah,
with the Grierson's raid.
Kind of like Franz Siegel in a way. Franz Siegel should have just stayed on artillery because he was good.
Yeah, but that really wasn't his forte, though. I mean, he happened to have that good day at Pea Ridge with artillery, which is ironic.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Probably. But there's a lot of guys you find their different things. We were saying last weekend we were in New York what a good cadet Grant was with cavalry. Yeah. He was one of the best horsemen in the entire his graduating class.
Yeah.
And he ends up not getting a cavalry gig for heading into Mexico.
Yeah.
So someone either has a bad agent or there's something's happening along the way.
David mentions in his Texas Brigade Superstars, one of the tragedies was men forced to go beyond where they were meant to be for Hardy did slap his dick around quite a lot pre-war.
Hardy, he got around, that guy.
Wasn't he like a like playboy?
Absolutely. He was always looking for love in all the wrong places,
Yeah, but then he
Is
got
what-
married.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he said someone made a man out of him, settled him down,
That's why his friendship with Claiborne is so. Claiborne's friends with all these guys that are like playboys, and Claiborne's like not having any of it. Like-
Yeah, I mean, Hardy took that shine to Claiborne and kind of, I don't want to say protect him, but he kind of kept him under his wing a little bit. And he ended up going to these parties and everything going on. And he ends up meeting Sue Tarleton.
Yeah.
By going to Hardy's wedding.
Yeah.
Right.
Only because Hardy begs him to go.
And you know what? He got married? The Bleak House. How about that name for a place to get married?
Oh.
Well, you like to get married at the Bleak House? Talk about setting the friggin', setting the course on the wrong way. I don't know what happened. I hope they live happily ever after on that one. But it didn't work out too well for old Patrick Claiborne with old Sue Tarleton.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
No. Then there's some mentions of Pillow, Floyd, Bishop Polk, all trash.
Oh, you can just look at Fort Donaldson. You can pick up garbage after that. I mean,
What is it? The one guy Breckenridge is like, I have to go because they're gonna arrest
because I'm
me.
wanted. I sold Union guns to the Confederacy and they know it. So they catch me, I'm screwed. I have to leave.
He's like, my people need me.
So like, who wants to stay? And they all went like this, But then Donaldson, that's who gets captured at Donaldson,
Granbury.
is Hiram Granbury.
Yeah.
That's where he gets caught. He gets shipped up to Boston here.
Yep.
Like that song says. That's what happened to him.
I bet he was listening to that song when that happened too.
I think he was. It had just come out.
Yep. Jam, I think his name Ben in real life. I think I'm not sure. It said Sickles was a dipstick. We like Dan.
I'm definitely a member of Team Dan. Not gonna lie to you.
I am too.
I think he's another guy who like McClellan, I think history shades him because he pissed off the wrong people. And say what you will about Dan Sickles, his cup of F's was empty, and he didn't care what you thought. I mean, he did what he was going to do, but he doesn't get enough credit at Gettysburg, and that's right. I said that. Regardless of what getting his corps wrecked and all that stuff, the way he maneuvered, bringing his army up and maintaining a left flank at the same time, was smart the way he did it. Mm-hmm. And one thing you can say about Uncle Dan, people say he was stupid. He was not stupid. He was one of the smartest people IQ-wise in the entire army. But he's part of the Excelsiors and part of that Tammany Hall fiasco. And, then the draft riots happened after Gettysburg, so you could see everything going on in those New York politics.
Yeah.
But Sickles, I think Sickles and Jim Hessler does a great job telling that story, which is kind of the contrarian view. But as you read that, if you believe it, and this is where when we were talking to Jim, what he and I disagreed about was that Charles Payne map.
Yeah.
If the Charles Payne map is right, then Sickles didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
Now, he doesn't think Sickles did anything wrong, but I don't think he buys a Charles Payne map. He thinks that's revisionist history.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, he got his corps wrecked, and a lot of the remaining Third Corps ended up being put into a division, and those guys got their asses kicked at Spotsylvania.
Yeah.
So wherever the hell they went, they were like a bad penny. If you saw a Third Corps soldier, it was like seeing a stormtrooper, one of those red shirt guys in Star Trek.
Oh, geez.
Right? Because they just went to the bad battles. It just had the hardest time of it for different reasons.
Sounds like Thomas Wood's division in the Western Theater. Like, look how many times he got screwed over twice.
Oh yeah.
Michael mentions Hood's attack into the cornfield was disastrous and basically destroyed his men for absolutely no gain. I do agree he was aggressive and successful.
Because he didn't let them have their breakfast first.
But he's he's bad.
They wanted their breakfast first, and he said, "No, go attack."
And then he repeated it again at Franklin.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's a lot of that. And that's what's cool about studying history is that history, what's great about it is it's just despite what Pendleton might think, it's not math, right? It's this gray area. It's perception. It doesn't mean someone's right, someone's wrong. It's just you can look at the different ways to do it.
Yeah.
I like George Meade, but he's got a lot of blood in his hands with Sickles.
Yeah, that's what Angela just mentions, that she partly blames Meade because instead of dealing with him personally, he's sending his son and Hunt out to deal
Hood's,
with
I
him.
mean, Sickles is going to send a courier 5 times to get further reviews from him. Now, again, Meade, he's got a lot of shit going. He's in the job 3 days, and he's trying to position his men. So it wasn't like he's, this is Grant, Overland Grant, who's been around forever at this point. He's still working his way through it too. And he did tell Sickles that he did have the right to adjust his line, but he didn't tell him, don't go all the way to Michigan.
Yeah.
He just basically said, you can adjust your line, but stay connected to the Second Corps. And that's where he gets in trouble. If you go to Gettysburg, you can see where the monuments stop. You can see exactly that big gap he had on Emmitsburg Road versus Peach Orchard. Mm-hmm. And he's got to fill the artillery in, Bigelow's guys, McGilvery, to fill that gap in. And that's where he gets in trouble.
Yeah.
But he in Dan's defense, he did try to get clarification. He brought Henry Hunt out with him.
Yeah.
And not to mention, they were still trying to decide if they were going to fight offensively.
Yeah.
And he knew that he needed the Peach Orchard. It was for an artillery platform.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's it. And this is all happening in real time with the bullets flying. So
this is why it's fun to talk about it, though. And so, we're still talking about 160 years later.
What else are we gonna do?
Well, yeah. Hashtag stand with Dan. Hashtag on one leg. Lucius Polk was probably like, yeah, no, I don't know about that, dude.
Well, Lucius Polk, he was a tough fighting prick too. He gets the bad rap because of Leonidas, but I mean, between him and Daniel Govan and Granbury and these guys, I mean, talk to your boy Howard about Pickett's Mill, about Lucius Polk.
Howard, I'm sure, did not like them.
Well, no, why the hell would you?
No,
that's like enjoying the nail you just stepped on. Yeah. It's true though.
I mean, he knew who they were by that point. But yeah, Lucius Polk is this guy that gets this he must suck like his uncle did. It's like, why? He was one of the best ones they had in that army, I think.
Oh no, he definitely was. And both of these, we talk about how the army had their share of screwed up people, but the army also had their share of pretty smart people and guys who learned on the fly.
Yeah.
But you can make your list of the shitty ones, Stephen D. Lee, people like that. But you can say the same thing for the Union side. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Stephen D. Lee was the one that said he had a victory when he didn't.
Yeah. In Mobile, I mean, he was one. But you had a lot of stupid crap. Nelson Miles. You can pick one. But it's, again, if you can step back from that mindset with these guys, you expect to make all the perfect decisions. You had limited information. It was in real time. There's bullets flying. You don't know where the hell the enemy is half the damn time. It's the dark. You're in the woods. You got the freaking Rosewoods clown hunting you down. He's out there. And you're supposed to make a perfect decision every single time. It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. But I mean, I'll give Sickles credit for trying to be proactive. But again, if you been to Gettysburg and the original position where Sickles' men was stationed, it's not a great place. It really isn't.
He thought it was a lot, and we talked about this with Hessler. He thought it was a lot like the ground that Sickles was looking at, not at Hazel Grove from Chancellorsville. He was thinking of it, in my opinion anyway, he's thinking of it more in terms of what Howard was facing at Chancellorsville and thinking I better move my corps because I don't need to get wrecked.
Yeah.
And I think that's what he was seeing was not Hazel Grove, but where Howard's position had been, because that was I think that scared the shit out of all the commanders in the Union Army, that what happened to Howard, they realized this could have happened to us too. Because very bad place. I don't care who you are. You're getting routed by Jackson's men in that position, even if you're John Reynolds.
Yeah, no, you're probably, but speaking to Gettysburg with the Sickles thing, I mean, you've got good recon, and you're told that Little Round Top is unoccupied, that the Union is not in position, and that's the key to it too. Is you get lost in the verbiage, and when the word came back that the Union was not in position, doesn't mean they weren't there. It means they weren't ready to fight. They were sitting around camp and they had their campfires going. And that's the report they got. And Lee's thinking that the Union line ends pretty much where the Vermont monument is now, or the Pennsylvania monument, right in that same area. And that flank attack looks pretty good. Again, Lee liked his flank attacks,
Yeah.
right? That looked pretty good if that's where the Union Army ends. And you know, in the big debate is, you know, Sickles moving his army up. You know, the original plan was you're going to use McLaws to lead, and you're going to kind of work the line down the Emmitsburg Road as a pivot point and roll the Union up like a blanket. That's how they want to do it. And Sickles moving up forced Hood to kind of go around.
Yeah.
Right. Which kind of delayed. So you can see in real time stuff, but he has to
they're having,
he's delayed. And you got guys like Carnot Posey not doing anything, and you got all that fiasco that happened with that echelon attack. Again, it's in real time. It's not a video game. It's not a movie.
No.
I mean, stuff's going to happen the way it's going to happen. But again, Longstreet he was one brigade short, just the one brigade short. He could have broken through and got there.
Yeah, and MJ said that his move, so Sickles' move, caused Longstreet and Lee to spin new attack strategy right on the fly. They're having to change what they want to do.
Well, it just depends on who took the lead. You know, and that was a big part of it. Longstreet, for whatever reason, promised McLaws he'd be in the lead, and that's why that countermarch, when you get to Breams Hill, instead of turning everybody around, they made them all do like a snake, and that delayed the whole goddamn thing. And it did create it. So by the time they got in position and ready to attack, the Union's right at the Peach Orchard now.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where, so it does is you have to now go around, and then everything goes from there. But you got the Texas brigades. The first goes to the triangular field. The fourth and the sixth go. The fourth and the fifth go around to round top. The whole thing's falling apart as soon as Hood gets injured. Yeah. And that's a big part of it too. Is it's easy to plan something with that many guys. And Pickett's charge, and we said this past weekend. Pickett's charge gets way too much credit. The second day at Gettysburg is really the meat and potatoes part of the battle. It really is.
It's the fascinating part of the battle. MJ said a problem is many people sit here in the 21st century and play armchair general. We weren't there in their time under battle conditions and their mindset. They were all human. And I definitely agree with that. David said it's interesting because old Bishop Polk was garbage, but Lucius Polk was a great officer. And I do agree with that.
Well, I mean, this doesn't mean same deal. You got some great ones, you got some bad ones. Yeah, it's just the same family. I mean, Leonidas Polk, I mean, his situation was a lot different than Lucius's was, right? And I hate to think that someone thinks my father's great, therefore I suck, and vice versa.
Well, that's just it. I wonder how, I'm sure he took shit over his uncle. Your uncle sucks.
Well, I'm sure they did. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the guys did. But again, it's easy to look back at a 160 year, looking glass and dissect and analyze every little thing these guys do right and wrong. But when that attack happens, even though it was kind of thrown into disarray a little by Sickles, Longstreet did maneuver pretty well. Once it got going, and he had the breakthrough there with Lane's Floridians. Ambrose Wright's, Georgians. And if you believe Ambrose Wright, the guy with the mullet, right? He says he got to the angle, and then he saw the Floridians gone. He saw to his left the Virginians hadn't gone. He was all by himself, and he fell back. And so that's the thing. That's what gets you.
LC said McLaws needed Rudolph to lead the way.
Yeah. Well, McLaws, I mean, he must have felt empowered because Lee is giving orders directly to McLaws, and Longstreet is like, well, is he taking orders directly from Lee now? She's not going to listen to me. And in this part of that whole, if you read a lot of the Longstreet book, or if he'll tell you, or you read Corey Farr's book, that he was kind of demasculated a little bit. But if the Lee people, you read a lot of the Lee people, they'll tell you quite the opposite, that Longstreet was just being bitter, being a little bitch about it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. There's still the rivalries that go on today between the two, between the different generals and all that. You people that are championing for one.
Well, you could read Bob Frick. There's a million people in the Lee Longstreet thing you could read about and decide what you want to do. My own personal opinion, I said this before, is Longstreet never accepted the fact that he was Lee's subordinate. That once Jackson went down, he felt that he was right there with them at the right hand of Robert E. Lee. And I think Lee made sure he knew that he was a subordinate. And I don't know how much Longstreet liked that. So if you read his book, I mentioned a couple of times now, the Manassas Maddox book, he clearly is the type of, if they listened to me, things would have been different. So he said that, especially about Gettysburg.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong. The battle was supposed to be a defensive campaign, and everything kind of went change. But somebody, what Longstreet had to realize is that Lee has the ability, he has the right to change his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to like it.
Yeah.
And if they did go all the way around like he wanted to do to get between Washington and get between the army, you're going into enemy territory where they hadn't been before, with no supply lines and not sure where the hell the Union Army is. So Lee was smart not to send him around, despite what Patrick Gorman says in the movie about going around the right.
Yeah.
Because if he did that, he could have walked right into a trap there, right into a trap. So that's the thing. It's easy to look back and play what if when you know how the game ends.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, as AQ mentions, what we see today with additions of roads, monuments, changes in geography isn't what they saw either. So it's hard to judge from the comfort of your couch with a nice hot and dirty martini.
Is that what she's having right now? Dirty martini?
Probably.
Pretty funny. But she's absolutely right though. And that's the thing is when you talk to some of the people in some of these battlefield towns, they're gonna sit there and say they should have done this. Ewell should have taken that hill. If Stonewall was there, they would have taken that hill. And I'm like, well, if Stonewall was there, they wouldn't even have been a hill to take. They probably wouldn't have been there anyway. Yeah. By the by, right? But that's what happens is you get set in certain ways and you look at it.
Yeah.
And that's
you don't hear it as much at the Western theater battles, I find. I don't know if it's because like you don't run into, they're just not the same vibe as Gettysburg. They're still Western theater is still my favorite one to study though. Between
yes, you do. With Chickamauga, we certainly did.
That's true.
I mean, how many times they tell Rosecrans to get your shit together? Your army's 50 miles spread.
Yeah,
but today. Right, but I'm saying but Braxton Bragg is he's going to attack you, and Bragg had a good plan against him. And if it wasn't for Mincy and Wilder holding that West Chickamauga Creek, but I think the people do talk about it, but I think it's just not talked about as much. No. And I think it's because of the movie. The movie's the 30th anniversary coming is a big part of it because the movie does make it sound that it's more talked about more in mainstream talk, but that should happen everywhere. It absolutely did.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely did. And there's so many of these guys to study on the both sides, like good and bad. Like MJ says, if you want to have a favorite or pick a certain historical person, that's fine, but tell their whole story, both good and bad. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like when we did our episode,
Buster's all good. The Buster Cullerane story is all good.
Ken Tilley's his champion.
Yep.
But it's like when we did our episode about Howard, we had to talk about both sides of that. Like
that was tough for you. You were bad for a few days after that one.
No, I wasn't. I know full well he made mistakes.
No, but that's the reality of it too. It is, but that's the thing. Is it isn't so much, and you find out a lot of the decisions, the bad things were made because of intelligence that they thought was true. That turns out it wasn't true, right? Yep. And that's the case for all this stuff. None of these people, Howard didn't go to Chancellorsville saying, "Hoo, I'm going to get routed today."
Yep.
That's how it was. Lee didn't do Pickett's charge thinking, boy, is this going to be bad?
Yep.
And all those guys, Howard didn't. Hood didn't send his guys to Franklin. Well, he probably did. Never mind. But for the most part, they did these things with the right idea in mind of what they were going to do. Patrick Clayburn, he does his Emancipation Proclamation. Thinking, you want to win the war, this is how you do it. But he touched the third rail that you weren't supposed to do.
And then who was it? Was it shot pouch that
It was shot pouch Walker.
F this.
He's like, I'm taking this to the boss. You're in trouble.
And then Claiborne's like, do it because I want the boss to see.
Yeah. But I mean, none of these guys none of these guys, McClellan did not sit in Tatum going, oh, someday someone's going to write a book about me sitting on my ass. It's going to be awesome. You know, he did what he felt was best. And you can look back, it's like a football game. You can look at a coach makes this decision. You're on the goal line. You should have run the ball. You threw it. You got picked off and you lost the Super Bowl. In his mind, he made the right decision at the time. History is going to prove him wrong. Doesn't mean his decision was wrong. His thinking was wrong. It's just that the execution was wrong. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing with all these guys, every one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Michael mentions the whole story of the Vicksburg campaign is just as epic, and it's not a movie, or it should be. I think the Vicksburg campaign needs to be a movie.
Yeah, how long that would be?
Miniseries then.
You know, Chapter 1, Chickasaw Bayou.
Sherman gets his ass handed to him.
Yeah, he does, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could though, because you know he basically found like 6 ways not to attack Vicksburg. It's kind of what Grant did, but it's a great campaign though.
Oh, it is.
And we mentioned briefly Benjamin Grierson a little while ago. We were talking about Suey Smith. Brilliant campaign. And, you know, landing at Bruinsburg was the largest amphibious landing until D-Day in U.S. history. Mm-hmm. And probably Grant's greatest stroke of genius was the Vicksburg campaign. It really, really was, because it was very intricate. This is once he got to Bruinsburg. You send Grierson out, you fake to Jackson, then you come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you kind of pin them, and then poor Pemberton gets smoked, and that's the end of that.
I loved when Tim Smith was on the book club and he was like, they need to have a bobblehead of Pemberton at the Vicksburg Visitor Center.
Yeah.
Because of what Grierson was making him do was just like look the other way.
Well, Grierson was so much in his head. We were reading those reports, those after action reports, but everything was a noun, a verb, and Ben Grierson for Pemberton. Everything he wrote, because Pemberton, we want to talk about how much people like Mosby were in the heads of the Union. People like Sheridan. Yeah. Grierson was in the head of Pemberton.
Oh yeah.
Especially when they couldn't get him. When they everywhere he went, they just couldn't get the damn guy, and they would just miss him. He's going through Houston, Mississippi, and he's coming back around, and he's driving everybody crazy. He's staying ahead of the Confederates at every single step. And what he's doing, he's taking his eye off of Grant by watching Grierson. Yeah. And then Grant comes to get you. That's what happens.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's why you said it needed to be a bobblehead.
Yeah, well, I'm sure somebody can make one.
That'd be cool.
He's buried in Philly, you know.
We've seen his grave.
Yeah, he's buried at the same cemetery Meade is.
Yeah, which is really interesting. But I guess, he was from Pennsylvania originally. He's a northern guy who.
You know who else is buried there is Henry Bingham from Gettysburg with Armistead. He's buried there too.
We saw his grave too. Yeah. We should probably get ready to jump off here soon too, because it's
it's almost 9 o'clock. It's almost bedtime.
Yeah.
You know, for this stuff. So so it's fun. It's fun to do this. Back to work for us tomorrow. God, that sucks. Let's step back in the 21st century again. So we'll have some fun stuff coming up. We're gonna be doing the Halloween thing here pretty soon. We're gonna try to do another one. We'll try to do another one here pretty soon too. But we have to work around your school schedules. That's the big challenge right now.
Insanely busy right now. So
yeah, it is. So all right, why don't we jump off? It's almost 9 o'clock. So
thank you for everybody for hopping on here with us tonight.
Yeah, the nighttime stuff is tough. I mean, admittedly, it's on a work night. It's great, although it's a holiday. So hopefully people can head today off and then get back tomorrow and have their batteries charged, like Lee before he took off at Williamsport. He got scuttled by McClellan, right? That's how it is. So. Anyway, all right. So, any last words from you, Finn Giroux? Anything?
Just thanks for everybody coming on here, and thanks for being the awesome co-host you are. And we will be back with you guys next Sunday at 10 a.m. Well,
that's right. We're gonna do this next Sunday because Mary's gonna work it. And that's what we're gonna do. All right. Anyway, guys, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your week rather, and have a good, safe week. Hopefully, the weather is becoming very autumnish where you are. Hopefully, it works out pretty well. And thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Mary, again, as usual, the pleasure, all yours. We say this many, many times, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Yeah, we'll see y'all on Sunday morning, hopefully.